Hey, welcome back again. We are up to Python day number 2 in this camp. As you probably recall from last time, we've got a theme this year for sustainable development. It's just kind of a fun little theme. And we're doing the same projects in this camp in Scratch and in Python. And so if you followed along with the Scratch camp at all, you actually know exactly what we're going to do. So in day 1, both camps did build a house. We did it in Scratch. We did it in Python together last time. And then this time, we're doing a project about recycling. So recycling in Scratch and recycling in Python. We'll start off just by kind of showing you where we're at and where we're going. So number 1 done, working on number 2 here. And there's a solution here. If you want to look at the solution, you can. The only challenges with solutions, and we let you look at them, is you think, I've already got it done. I don't need to do it. Well, that would defeat the purpose. Our goal is learning here, right? And so the solution in Python, I suppose I could at least hide the code so you don't just see it right there. Our solution in Python is this guy here. What's going on is you use the left and right arrow keys to catch stuff. And so the recycling thing should go in the recycling bin, and then the trash thing should go in the trash bin. And so we've done this in Scratch if you were watching the other camp, but I'm guessing this is all new to you. And you can see that you switch between recycle and trash. And the way you do that is that you hit R or T. It's hard for me to talk and explain. Maybe I should just lose. And every time you catch something correctly, it's like glass should be recyclable. Paper with this milk cartridge should be recyclable. My 17 up there is going to go to 18. And then this is trash. That should go in the trash bin. And so long as you do things correctly, you get caught correctly points. If they hit the ground, you lose a point. So you can see that one hit the ground. Or if you catch something incorrectly, you lose a point. So here I'm going to try to recycle a tennis ball, try to recycle some old shoes, recycle a tennis ball. Those all went bad. If the number that hit the ground or that are caught incorrectly totals 10, that's when you lose. So you lose the game at that point. It's kind of big. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a big project. You'll notice that every year, we've been doing this for, I don't know, seven years or so, we've always done 5 projects, 1 project per day. This is the first year we've ever said it would be silly to do 5 projects because each of these projects is a humongous project. And we don't expect you to necessarily be able to finish the whole thing in just one setting, just one day. So there's 4 projects and you do them at your own pace. So that's what we're going to be building. We're going to be building it up a little at a time. We're going to be learning about variables. We're going to be learning about nested if statements, just kind of like some example code here. We're going to be learning about lists. We're going to be learning about images, random numbers, lots and lots and lots of stuff. And we're going to be learning about this API. API stands for Application Programming Interface, which is made for us by REPL, which is kind of fun. And we're going to be using REPL. By the way, we're choosing to use REPL, but if you have it set up, you could also run this on PyCharm as well. Let me go ahead and bring up my PyCharm just to kind of show you what that looks like. And so PyCharm is a program that you could have on your own computer. And you could run things with PyCharm. We kind of showed you that last time. And to be honest, PyCharm is better because it runs a little snappier, right? So, I mean, if you want to, oops, I trashed the wrong thing here. But it runs a little snappier, and you can actually get things on your own computer running smoother. The only reason we don't say, hey, everybody use PyCharm is it takes a little while to set up. And we kind of talked about that in the last video about how you could set it up if you wanted. If you take the time to set it up, it is better in every way, effectively, right? But we're choosing to do it on REPL just because there's no setup. Cool. So let's go ahead and see what we're going to start with. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start by giving you the Scratch version. So this link you definitely need. So find the slides, or maybe we'll put it in the video description. But this is a solution to the Scratch project. And we're going to use this as our starting point for learning Python. So it's kind of weird to start with a finished thing, but this is the same program. implemented in Scratch. So go ahead and play it in Scratch. Scratch, you can see we also added sound effects because, well, it's quite a bit easier in Scratch, just to be perfectly blunt about it. And so what we're trying to do is much harder to do it in Python. And then that, of course, makes people say, it's like, oh, is everything harder in Python? The answer is no. Everything is not harder in Python. It's really that Python lets you do billions of things, and Scratch lets you do thousands of things, right? And in order to be able to do billions of things, there's a lot more details you have to know. So there's good reason that we start with Scratch, and there's a good reason that we spend a lot of time with Scratch. You learn some tremendous skills, but at some point, and presumably you're in this this series because think you're at this point, you want to learn text-based programming because that's what people really use in industry. Because Scratch is great for making games, but you can't make a website, you can't make an app, you can't make a database, you can't make it's limited, right? But we do want to use this as our starting point and our guide. We also want to use it to get our images. So what's going to happen is we're going to work in Replit. So just go ahead and open up, I think I've got 2 copies of this open. Go ahead and open up a new tab to replit.com. So here I'm just on replit.com. Make sure you're signed in. And click on Create REPL. And then the template that we want is we want the Pygame template. Now, Pygame is a different API. Interestingly, we're not using Pygame. We're using one called Replit Play. But Pygame is the template which gives you a place for code, which we need, and then also a place for like your graphical output. So this is going to be my recycling. And so I've already got one named recycling, so I'm going to call mine recycling video. Just call yours recycling, it'll be fine. And make sure it's a Pygame template on REPL. And so the nice thing about REPL is they make it free for you, which is crazy, right? Which is cool. But the downside is that it is running in a cloud environment. And everything in here is code that's specific to Pygame, which is great. I love Pygame. You can run it. It actually will make a little window for you here, and that window will say hello world, but then have nothing else. Could tell you all about Pygame. I know it really well, but that is not what we're going to use. What we're going to use is a different library. So let me just go ahead and type a couple words in this library. This library is called Play. So Play, it's actually made by REPL, which they're people who make this website make this library as well. And what it is it's a different, like it's a rival to Pygame, I guess you could say, set of rules for making graphics. And the way it works is you start off by saying import Play, so you can go ahead and type that at the top of your code. And then at the bottom, you type play.startProgram. And if your, it's called your IDE, so your integrated development environment, the place where your type is good enough, it should actually like autocomplete things for you. And so mine I was hoping would there, which is why I paused, but then it didn't work out. Now, the first time you run a program that imports Play and does the start program, and then the idea is all of my code will go here. Remember, this is a comment. It starts with this £, this hash. And if I run this, the first time I run it, it actually runs really, really slow. So I went ahead and started it just because it's got to like download this Replit Play library and whatnot. While it's doing that, I'm going to actually go learn about this library called Replit-Play. So I'm going to open up a new tab here, and you can do this as well. And I'm just going to do a Google search for Replit-Play. So that's what it's called. Note that you only actually have to type import Play, but the library itself is called Replit Play. And my very first one here is a GitHub repository. GitHub is a very popular website for coders. A lot of people use this to back up and protect their code. So the documentation for Replit Play is actually just on this page. And so there's lots and lots of information here. And so just to say it again, this is an API for doing graphics. API stands for Application Programmer Interface. And it just really means a bunch of commands for doing graphics. And so what I'd like to do is I'd just like to see if it works or not. And they've actually got a little sample program here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this whole thing. So I'm just going to click on this little copy button. So you should find this website so you can copy it as well. Otherwise, you got to type the whole thing. That's a giant pain. And I'm going to come over here. I can see that this did run successfully. Everything was fine. It says hello from Pygame community, all was good. But I'm going to hit stop because it just made a white window, right? And I'm going to delete everything again and paste on what their sample program had in it. Now you can see that I typed import play before and I typed play start game before, and then it was also in my template, so no big deal. So the way their little sample here works is it's a little cat face done with text that's jumping around, and your goal is to try to click on it before it moves on you. It's actually shockingly difficult. In fact, I think whoever played this game must have been like a master at it. Because I can never win this stupid thing. So if you're like me and you can't win this thing, maybe you've got a touch. Yeah, I got it. Finally, I won. You could look at the code and you could try to figure out how to make it easier. So take a minute, see if you can figure out how to change the code. You don't know this API at all. See if you can take a minute and see if you can figure out what you would need to change to make it much easier to make it say you won. So I'm going to hit stop here, change my code, and then come back again. All right, pause the video. All right, so if I was looking at this, I don't necessarily know this library at all. I can see it says things like cat equals play dot new text. Well, I'll tell you what, this dot says, hey, here's a command that's within this play API. And in fact, you can see, because I highlighted here, there's lots of commands which are not built into Python. They're just commands that are only available because we brought in this library called play that somebody else wrote, and we're using it, right? So you can see that they made this cat. There's this play repeat forever. This is kind of like Scratch. This library is supposed to feel like Scratch. It makes a random number. Presumably this is the cat's X and Y, so this is where he shows up. The color is random. He's shown here. And then this looks very promising. Await. No idea what that's all about. But it says seconds right here. Yeah, let's just change this. So this is how long you show it for. Then that's how long you hide it for. Let's say we show it for 2.4 seconds. So I just changed the 0 to a 2 there, and then I try it again. Well, now he's just sitting right there. And it takes him 2 seconds before he moves. So to win, all I've got to do is I've just got to very slowly walk over here and click him. And it changes to you won. So it's nice to be able to read other people's code. And it's nice to be able to adopt their code to what you want to do. Does that make sense? So here's what we got. We've got to somehow get from this thing about a cat all the way to this like finished thing about like water and things like that. So I've got to pick somewhere to start. And so I think where I'll start is this thing is showing me how to make new text. Let's glance over here at this API. Search for the words new text. You can see that there's a hit right there. That's what I copied from before. And so here's another example. So it says greeting play.newText. So it seems pretty obvious to me that new text is text that shows up on the screen, right? And so this little cat jumping around is actually just text. You can see it's just an equal sign, 2 caret symbols, a period. It just kind of looks like a cat, right? And so if I wanted to put text on the screen, this is how I would do it. And so the thing in my game that's most similar to that is right here. I've got this text up across the top. And this is going to keep track of my different variables. So that's going to be interesting. Probably should have left that up, but I closed it. And so what I want to do is I want to change this this program in ways that I can use. Now, I kind of like their example here. It's kind of like a good reminder for what I'm doing. One thing you can do is you can comment it out. The way that I commented out is I highlighted it all. So I put my cursor at the start here. I held down shift is the way I did it. And then while holding shift, I hit the down arrow and I got it to where all these lines were encapsulated. and then I hit Control /. So see if you can find Control /. On a Mac, it's actually Command /. The / is, here we go, I'll just type a /. It's the one that looks like that, right? So that's a /. By the way, a backslash would be that. So whichever way the top is going defines what it is. All right, so what I did is I highlighted the whole thing. Here I'm holding down Shift and using the up arrow, and I hit Control /, and that will comment it all out or uncomment it all. It's very handy to get good at these shortcut tricks. And so what I want to do is I want to make a scoreboard. So I'm just going to say scoreboard is equal to play.new text. And as I mentioned previously, if your IDE is good, it will help you to complete things. And so right now it says that new _t. Oh, you probably want this this new text thing. As a matter of fact, I do. And it's telling you, it's trying to help me at least, figure out what all this can do. So first off, it needs some words. So I'm just going to go ahead and type the words cut correctly was 0. Now I'm doing something wrong here. Does anybody know what it is? I'm typing words, which that's perfectly natural thing to do. But if you look at theirs, they actually have the words surrounded by either single quotes or double quotes. And so I'm going to do that as well. So I actually meant to put that in double quotes there and double quotes there. Now in their example, they use single quotes instead of double quotes. It doesn't matter. You can use either one. If you prefer single quotes, you can use them. For me, I don't know why I decided 30 years ago I was going to use double quotes, and I always have, right? And so if I change it to just this, something, I don't know what, but something will happen. And so I run it, and sure enough, it says cut correctly equals 0 in big letters right in the middle of the screen. That's cool. I actually, that's neat. So I imported their library. I used it to make a text object, and then at the very bottom I have the start program. Make sure you did not comment that out before, or else you will regret it. All right, so let's go ahead and see what else could we do to try to make this look right. So I'm happy with it, except for the fact that I want it to look right. And so I want it to show up at the top. I want it to say more stuff. I want it to be purple. I want it to be smaller. Whew, lots and lots of things to do. So how do we do that? So in their example over here, they list a whole bunch of things that you can do. What I'm going to do, just because I'm very lazy, is I'm going to copy theirs, paste it over here, and see if I can kind of use that as a template for what I'm wanting to do. So the first thing that they did that was different than what I did is they say words equals hi there. This is optional in Python. So here I'm just going to try to explain it to you. In Python, the first variable you don't have to describe at all. And if you want to put the second variable on, so for example, I could put an X on here of let's say -100. And so if I were to run it again, well, it's confusing because I've got the words hi there on top. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move hi there to -500. Let's go with -300. 500 is going to be off the screen, I believe. 300 was almost off the screen. I barely caught the edge. So here's what's going on. I can specify the first one by just saying it, and the second one with what the variable is called. So that variable is called 100. I could also just put in the 100, and it'll figure out that the second variable is the X. Now, which is easier for other people to read? So let's say I were to put in a Y of, I don't know, 250 here. It turns out that the third variable is in fact the Y. And so I could write it very shortly if I just know the order, or I could do this. I could do what they did, and I could say words equals that, and then I could say X equals that, Y equals that, And so it has the advantage of being more readable later, right? So I can easily read, hey, these were my words, this was my X, this was my Y, things like that. The other advantage is that when you do these names, you don't have to do all of them. So you can see that the font defaults to none. So it's got some default font size. I don't know if I want to set that or not yet. I'll just kind of keep cruising without it. So the font, it just picked a font, sorry. The next thing is font size. It defaulted to 50, which is quite large. And then after that, there's color. And so what I can do is I can just switch down to color and give it a color. You can pick most common color names. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I think for mine, I picked purple. And so if I wanted to change that to purple, I could run it and see if that comes up. So another thing you can see is that you actually write a little bit of code and then you test it. A little bit of code and then you test it. There's really no value in writing a bunch of code that doesn't work. Because you shouldn't move forwards until it works. Great. So actually, I think that I'm pretty happy with how things are going. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of my words in here and just see how it looks. So I was supposed to do caught correctly, caught incorrectly, and hit ground were my goals. So caught incorrectly, and then hit ground. That equals 0 as well. And so I'm going to stop it and run it again. By the way, I believe you can minimize this thing on the side. I forgot to do it. There you go. And then it'll give you just a little bit more space. So mine's doing something, which is good. See if you can make it the correct size. So it's going to have to be somehow smaller. And then also it's going to have to be like, I don't know, moved around a little bit. See if you can do it on your own to make that neatly fit on the screen near the top. Go ahead and pause it, see if you can do it. All right, so I'm going to dive in as well. Well, the first thing I want to do is I think that I just want it centered, so I don't really have to set anything on the X. The main thing is there's this thing called font size that I want to set. It was set to 50 before, and there's nothing wrong with 50 except for the fact that my words don't all fit on the screen. So I'm going to type in 25. Now, another thing you'll notice is this comma. This comma is used to separate, you can see that there's a lot of commas that kind of hide there. It's used to separate the arguments. And so the arguments are the things that you pass to a function. It's kind of like, what do you need to tell somebody so that they can do the job you want done, right? That's the best way to describe it. Or if you're placing an order at a restaurant, it's, what do you write down on your order, right? So that's what they have to use to make it. Cool. And so I think that is starting to look pretty good, and you can tweak it to your heart's content. You can push it up to the top. I think the very top is 300, so you'd probably go off the screen if you do 300 or more. So I'm going to try 280, which is nice and high, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. I made the text 35. I think in this one it was actually a little smaller than that, but I think I like 35 better, as long as I don't catch like 999 of anything, so I think it'll be fine. Great, so I'm actually doing pretty good. The next thing I want to do is I had this greeting on here just as an example. You can see that you can do things like angle it, or maybe there's this transparency thing. I'm not sure if that actually works. But that was just kind of my example, and so I want rid of that. The next thing I'd like to do is I would like to have some images, right? So images, there's two problems with images. One is I've got to learn how to do it with the API. So let's go over to this API. I can see that this is how I'll make text, so new text. I wonder if there's other new things I could do. Well, there's new circle, if I want to make a circle, new line, that's all well and good. But the way you kind of learn about an API is you just kind of explore it. And the way I'm exploring it literally is I'm just kind of looking around to see what's going on here. Oh, above it was what I wanted. New image. This is going to be good. This is going to be good. Yeah, there's a box, an image, a text. I'm going to copy this image because a lot of what I'm doing are images. So you can see that part of computer science is leveraging what other people have done. And so let's see if I run this to see what happens. What do you think is going to happen? kaboom, it crashed. So it crashed because it says no file character PNG found in the working directory. Okay, so there's two problems with how do we do images. One problem is we have to know the code, which we now know. The other problem is we've got to actually have images. Now this part is just a little tedious. It's not the world's most fun, but you can see that there's quite a few images in this like Scratch version or in this Python version, and we need to bring them all in. So here's the background, the milk, the recycling, the shoes, the tennis ball, the trash, the water glass. Yikes. There's two good ways to do it. One is if you have the solution, you can come over here and you can just download each file from the solution. To be honest, that's probably the easiest, and that's what I would recommend you do. So feel free to download each of these to your computer. And then once you download them to your computer, you'll drag and drop them up here, right? So that's what I would recommend in general. But the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like I built this thing in Scratch, right? So I'm just going to pretend like I built it in Scratch. I think I've got two tabs of it open here. I'm going to close one of them. And in Scratch, you make some images. So we actually drew these. If you did this follow along, these were just part of the built-in Scratch images. And what I'm going to do, and then there's also a backdrop here, I'm going to come into Scratch and I'm going to export things. So here's what you need to know about exporting. If you right-click in Scratch, so you're going to need to open up the Scratch thing, and you can click on export. So you click on some costume and you can export it as a file. Now when you export it, there's a button down here that says either convert to vector or convert to bitmap. Depending on what mode it's in, it's going to determine what type of file you get. I get that this is complex, but once you do it a couple times, you'll get better at it, right? It just, bear with me, give it a shot, and we'll make it work. The type of file you want is you want the bitmap file. I know this is double confusing. If the button says convert to bitmap, then it must not be a bitmap, right? So you want to actually make sure you convert to bitmap so that it is a bitmap. And then you want to right click on it, and then you want to export it. Now when you export it, you're going to save it somewhere on your computer. I think I'm going to save it into a folder just called downloads. If you want to, you can make a special spot for it, but I'm just going to save it over here. And then I'm going to choose personally to rename mine. Just in case you didn't get a choice of where it goes and you didn't get a choice to rename it, it'll probably just be called Metro. So I'm going to go ahead and just download it just as is. Now Chrome is nice because it actually shows me the file right here. And so this is awesome because all I have to do is I just have to drag it. So this is like in my bottom ribbon. I just have to drag it and drop it right in there. And then boom, I've got it in my project, which is cool. So I'm going to change this from character.png to metro.png. Also, because I'm OCD, I don't like single quotes. I prefer double quotes, so I'm going to switch it to double quotes. And here I had to type metro.png because that was the name of the file. And so if I were to run it again, what should happen is I should be able to see my Metro image, which is cool. And right now it's called character. So it's got the name character for this object right here. Now the one thing that it did, which is a little overkill, just to be perfectly honest, is it set all these things to 0 and 100, 100. Those are actually all defaults. So just to kind of show you, I'm going to comment this out again because this is like my example. I highlighted it all using the shift down arrow trick. Pause the video whenever you need. And I'm going to show you how little code is actually needed. So you have to say play dot. That means use the play module functions. Play dot new underscore I. And what I like to do is as soon as it knows what command I'm going to type, I just hit enter and I let it type it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type just the name Metro PNG with nothing else. It assumes the first variable, and you can see it works just the same. It assumes the first variable is the file, which is Metro, which is great. And then all these other things were the defaults. So that was nice. Another thing you could optionally do if you wanted is you could rename it. So maybe I want to call it background or backdrop. Renaming it is fine. Just make sure that the name in your code matches whatever name you have over there. It keeps doing that thing to me, which is annoying. So they've just got to match, right? And it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what is named. It just has to match, right? Cool. So that's actually doing really good. I think the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to grab them when I need them. I want the two bins. So if I come into this trash bin, I can see that it's got two images. And these are the images that I made whenever I did the Scratch project. And I want to get these two images. Right now, these are vector images. You can see that I can select individual parts. These are vector images. You can try and export a vector image. Don't do this, just watch for a minute. But when I export it, you can see it saves it as file type .svg. Something vector graphics, silicon vector graphics, I think is the file type. The reason that I don't want that is because that file type, Pygame can't import SVGs, right? So that doesn't do me any good. So I'm going to click on this convert to bitmap. So now it's a bitmap. And then I'm going to right click on it and say export. And now it's going to export it as a recycle.png. By the way, you can see that the bitmap does look a little bit worse. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on undo. That way it'll go back to this nice sharp vector graphics. And then that way I didn't mess up this project for anyone else. By the way, you're encouraged. I didn't say this clearly at the start. Instead of just like looking at this, actually click on the remix button. You have to be signed in to click on the remix button. And then you've got the code in your own area instead of just looking at mine. So you probably can't modify mine now that I think about it. So I think, yeah, actually you have to remix mine, don't you? Yes, I'll have to put that note in the video. So I've got the recycle PNG. Next, I want to convert trash and then export it as trash.png. Super. And then I'm going to choose to hit undo here because you can see it's a little grainy as a bitmap. Undo in this nice crisp SVG file. Those two PNG files are saved to my computer somewhere. The beauty of Chrome is, personally, I don't even know where they're at. Right? So I'm just going to drag it from here to there. There's the trash one. Oh, fine. I actually do know where they're at. They're in this downloads folder. And the one I still need is called recycle. So I just drag it and drop it somewhere in this area. And that actually uploads the file. Cool. So we're doing good things here. Let's make this trash bin show up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say play.newImage. And I'm going to start off with, it doesn't matter which one I start off with, I'm going to start off with trash PNG. And I'm going to just run it. And so now I've got my background, and I've got my trash. Now a very keen observer will notice something. Where'd my words go? What? Wait, what happened to my, didn't I have these words up here? And the trash is on top of this. That's great. Let's see if we'll just run one more experiment with you. If I put my trash above the background and run it again, where'd my trash go, right? So it draws in layers. So it drew this one first, it drew this one second, and then it covered them both up with this third one. So we want to be really careful. We actually want to run the background as the very first thing. So I'm going to cut this from here. I'm using Control X to cut. And I'm going to actually put my background at the very, very top and run it right there. Cool. And now I've got my trash can and my words back, and I'm in good shape. Now, it just so happened that my trash can came in at a pretty good size, but if I'd wanted to, I could have changed its size. It came in at a pretty good Y value, so I was happy about that. Honestly, the only thing, X value in the middle, the only thing I really want to change is my Y value. And so here's what I'm going to choose to do. I'm going to say Y equals, and I want it to start near the bottom. Honestly, I don't know where the bottom is. I'm going to guess like negative 250. And so negative 250, a little low. So I'm going to change it to negative 150. And I'm just going to goof around with it until I'm happy with it. I think I did negative, that looks pretty good. I think in my notes I did negative 200. And also it seemed just a hair big to me, not a lot big. And so I put in a size of 80. Honestly, I think I put a size of 80 in just to prove that you could set the size if you wanted. Great. Is that roughly what this guy did? Oops, I got to find my output window here. Now that one actually appears to have showed up on the screen, whereas mine appears to have showed up below the screen. So I don't know what's different about that. Oh, it's just my window is a little shrunken. There we go. Now another thing that I did that was a little sneaky is I left off the words equal on the first one, and then I put it only on the subsequent ones. That's legal too, right? So whichever method floats your boat is just fine. I could go ahead and get all my other images now and test them out. It's just a matter of which way you want to roll, right? I don't have a strong preference. I guess I could kind of test them one at a time, or I could just wait till I need them. I think that I'll go ahead and get them all. Why not? Just because I know I'm going to need them. I need 2 pieces of trash, sorry, 2 recyclables, and I also need 2 pieces of trash. So that's my goal. And I'm going to choose to just name them like trash 1 and trash 2. So I'm going to grab this tennis ball. Note that it already said convert to vector. Now my tool lets me name it before I download it, which is actually super handy, right? Your computer may just force you to download it right away. That's fine. Oops, that one's an SVG. Forgot to click convert to bitmap. Export trash 2. So there's a trash 1, trash 2. That's enough trash. If you wanted to get more trash, you can see that you can add as many as you wanted, right? This one up, I see that it needs to be a bitmap. I'm going to say convert to bitmap. One annoying thing, by the way, this is like an overshare. White things also become transparent, and so if you know that that's coming, I don't care if you fix this or not, but like that one's actually white and that one's white, you can fill them in so that they're not white. Details. You didn't need to do that. All right, so I'm going to export this one, and I'm going to call this one recycle 1. My glass, I'm going to convert to bitmap and export this and call it recycle 2. And it's just because the names were so poor that I decided to rename them. Again, if you weren't able to rename them, that's okay. You can upload them as whatever they were. Since I'm working with Chrome here, I'm going to take trash 1 and trash 2. Recycle 1, recycle 2. Cool. Just to see if that all worked out fine, what you can do is you can just kind of like do a quick test, right? So I've got trash 1, trash 2. I've also got recycle 1 and recycle 2. My names weren't amazing names, by the way. So for example, my recycling bins are just called trash and recycle. And then my recycling pieces are called 1 and 2, right? So not amazing. And then just so they don't all show up on top of each other, I'm just going to change the Y's of some of these. Maybe I'll make it like, I don't know, maybe I'll just make it like that and we'll just see what happens. Cool. And so I can see that I've got a piece of trash 1 showed up right on top of my my bin here, and then that one showed up there, and then that one showed up, and that one showed up. I do have a couple of sizing issues. They're just a little on the big side. I'll fix that later. So this was just a test. So this was, I'm just going to mark it as a temp test to see if the images could load. Now, whenever we're in a camp, there's a lot of problems, and I expect that you're having problems at home, and so I expect that you'll probably need to work with a group of people to try to fix problems, because there's so many problems that come up. Like somebody will just like I don't know, leave off a double quote, right? And it'll try to tell you that something's wrong there. But you're not experienced in programming. It says some error message and nothing shows up, right? That's like what happens. Or you'll, I don't know, have two parentheses in one spot, right? Like one little bitty old parenthesis, and it'll say something like unmatched. So I am expecting that you'll have difficulty, and I am expecting that you're going to need someone else's eyes, just because like two eyes help catch things. But hopefully you can get all. So there's 6 different images. I've never actually tested the recycle itself image. I guess I could test it really quick. Recycle. Should just be a green. I can barely see the green behind the tennis ball there. But I've got 6 different images, which should all be able to show up fine. And then there's 1 background, so 7 images total. Now, all of these were just temporary tests, so I'm just going to comment those out. Because that's not part of my final code, because those are going to get made in totally different ways. I just kind of wanted to do that as a starting point. Hey, we're way beyond when you should have taken a break. If you haven't taken a break, go take a break. And I'm gonna probably take a break as well. But we're doing a lot of difficult stuff, and we expect that Rome wasn't built in a day, and so we expect that it's going to take you some time to figure out all this stuff. But hopefully it's making some sense to where you can see how you could do some of these things all by yourself. All right, so let's see if we can get this thing moving. I took my little break and I'm ready to dive back in again. So really, I think the best way to start is to kind of learn from what we can see in this other example code. So what we want to do is we want to kind of make something to make it move back and forth. And so in Scratch, you can see that there's lots of ways to move back and forth. But essentially, there's this like when green flag click that did some stuff, and then there's this forever loop. So really the next thing I want to do is I want to make a forever loop so that I can make this like if left arrow, if right arrow, if R and T. Like this is my goal. I'm trying to do in Python what these guys did in Scratch. That's my goal. And you can see that I've got a little bit of an example down here from the cat earlier. So it does this at play repeat forever. What is that all about? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow this guy. So I'm going to uncomment him, and I'm going to kind of bring him up from where he's at and put him into my code. So I think I'm just going to kind of store all that junk down there. So I brought this in just so I wouldn't have to type as much, because you can see the syntax is kind of weird in Python, right? Like at play, so we know that something in the play library. I'm not going to go into what at means in Python. It's actually not very common, but it's something that this API uses. It's what's called an annotation. Moving on. The next thing that's kind of weird in this is this word async and this word def. I won't go into this too much, but this word async and this word def, they do different things. Def makes a function. Def is actually a very common thing to do. Async is something you only need if you've got time delays in it, right? So if you have time delays, you have to put this async word on. Again, we won't go into it too much. I think what I'll do is I'll modify it some to make it more traditional. So more traditional, async we don't need if we don't have these time delays. So you can see this word async and this word await, they kind of go together. We'll visit that more in the future. Other things that we don't really need is all this code about cats, right? So we don't actually need anything about a cat. What we really want to do is we want to see if a button is pressed, then we want to move the recycling bin. So just to kind of see what our goal is, what we want to do is we want to take our bin and change his X. Oh, I guess I've got my first problem here. I didn't save off a name for this guy. So let me go ahead and fix that first. So I'm going to say bin equals. What this does is this gives the object a name by which we can refer to it later. So if people wanted to refer to you, you've hopefully got a name. My name's Dave. This object right here, this thing, his name is bin. B-I-N for like trash bin. And if I wanted to, I could say bin.x equals, oh, this would be fun, a random number. So if I play it right now, it's going to move around so fast, it's going to be kind of painful, is my suspicion. So if I take it down here, you can see that it's kind of going crazy, right? And so it's moving itself, which is kind of interesting, but not what we want. And we can kind of see how it works. So we refer to him as his name, and then he has properties. So these are things that are true of him. It's like, what color is my hair? What color are my eyes? How many fingers do I have? He has an X, which is his location. We can change it like that. Now what we really want to do is we want to take his X and we want to either increase it or decrease it by some amount. I'm going to do 10 for now. So if I were to increase it by 10, I would take whatever his X was and then add 10 to it. Now I'm going to have to be pretty fast in this because he's going to just sail off the screen, right? Now ultimately what I want to do is I want to only do this move when an arrow key is pressed, or I'm going to do minus 10 to go the other way. So I'm going to go either plus 10 or minus 10. And you can play with it to see which you think is the most fun. The other thing I want to do is I don't want to always do plus 10, minus 10. If I ran this now, it would be not very interesting at all because it would do plus 10, minus 10. It wouldn't even appear to move, right? I want to only do plus if I'm pressing a keyboard key. So I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and add an if statement here. Now, when we add if statements, we have to be very careful about indentations. So in Python, indentations are part of the code. And so whenever you type a function with def, you can add code into it with if. And then after you type in if statements, you're going to have some condition. Maybe it's just easiest to type it. Let me go ahead and tell you what this is going to be. It's going to be key is pressed. I could have gone into the API and found that, but I just knew what it was, right? So key is pressed. What I want is I want the left key. Some people, by the way, they like the arrow keys, or some people that are left-handed, they actually prefer the A key. And so what this line of code says is it says that if the left key, left arrow is pressed, or the A key, either one, doesn't matter which, then move the X in the, that one should be the negative direction. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then we'll talk more about it. And then if the right is pressed, or some people that are left-handed like to use the D key, it's called WASD, then in that case do plus 10. Now let's talk about indentations. So indentations are part of the code in Python. You can indent to show that you're a part of something either 2 spaces, this one's currently 2, or you could do everything at 4 spaces. So the code that I deleted from down here actually was using 4 spaces. You can do 2 or 4. It doesn't matter. You just have to pick one and be consistent about it. It's like single quotes or double quotes. You can pick either one you want, but you do have to be consistent about it. And so you notice that very carefully, this def line, which by the way, the function is still called moveCat. Maybe I ought to change that to be called moveBin. The name doesn't actually matter in this case because it's getting called like inside by the system. So this repeat forever takes care of calling it. So what it's called doesn't matter. So I just like to make it descriptive. So moveBin. And if the key is pressed, and key is pressed is a function that's inside the play library. So if left is pressed or A, go minus 10. If right is pressed or D, go plus 10. Let's see if it works. And then, so yeah, what I was talking about, I got sidetracked there, was indentations. And so if you look at my code, you can see that I very carefully indented 2 spaces is what I picked. So it goes, if you look up, it goes like the D and the E, and then there's an I right there. The indentation matters, it's part of the code. And then this one has 2 spaces, so kind of like there's a space under the I, space under the F, and there's the B. Since it's part of the code, you got to get it right. And so if I were to like have this thing like indented way over here, that's a syntax error, right? Because the indentations are part of the code. So I need to do 1, 2 spaces to get it this far. And then the colons always tell you when you're about to indent again, right? And so if statements have code inside of them, and then we do 1, 2 spaces for that. Now, a keen observer will notice that this is actually almost the exact same as what Scratch did. They have if statements, and they have a condition. So left key is pressed, then change the X by, oh, we did 15 over here. I guess we could make it 15. It doesn't matter to me. Sure, 15. Does not matter. And if the right arrow is pressed, we change the X by positive 15. So you can see how it's the same concepts. So Scratch teaches you these very useful concepts. It's just in a different language. It's in the language of Python. And again, it's going to feel like Python. Everything's harder about Python. But the number of things you can do in Python is just so much greater. The next things we want to do are these R and these T's. And you can kind of look at this and guess what the code's going to be like. So if play dot key is pressed R, so we're going to look for R, then we're going to switch our costume to recycle, and then also set some variable for like is trash bin to true or false. So that's our next plan. Let's see if we can do that. I think what I'm going to do, because I'm a very lazy individual, is I'm going to start by copying the code that I had before and modifying it because I want to do something for R and something for T. And the thing that I want to do has nothing to do with the X's, it has everything to do with what's called the costume. Let's see if our IDE can help us figure out what the costume is called. So some what's called IDEs are really good at this. So I typed a dot and then I just kind of waited, which is kind of fun. And it looks like you can change what's called the image. That's kind of neat. You can change the image to a new file name. And there's, yeah, all kinds of these things you can do. I think that image sounds like a pretty promising one. To be honest, I'm surprised you can have properties, like height is a property, is clicked is a property, or you can have functions that you call. I was expecting image to be a property, but it looks like it's a function. Well, look at all those things. There's a ton of them. Oh, here's like the X, the Y, things like that. Oh, there's the image one that I was planning to use. Let's go ahead and use their code, and let's figure out how we're going to do this. So what we really want to do is we want to change the image. Now it seems like, oh, we have two options. We can either do the function, or we can just actually use the proper directive. Let's try this function. This will be fun. This is not how I did it before, but let's just see if it works. So if they press R, I want to use the file name called recycle. And if they press T, I want to set the image to the file called trash. Cool, so see if you can make your code look like mine. I don't know if it's going to work or not yet, because the way I did it in my preparation was actually different. So I'm gonna see if it works or not same time you do, right? And so what should happen, now make sure you've got focus on your window. I like to move it slightly just to make sure that my focus is on the window. So when I press T, it looks like, nope, that was not the right syntax. All right, shouldn't have risked it. Here's the way that I did it in my notes. So you should switch it to be like this. I set the image to be equal to the string recycle or trash. I thought that either was going to work, and I was incorrect. So let's see if this one goes better. So when I press T, it switches to trash, and when I press R, it goes to image and recycle. Cool. Yeah, that makes more sense. So R is for recycle, T is for trash. My arrow keys move it around. You can see that it's a little glitchy. The video is probably really glitchy, but it actually is working fine. If you wanted it to be less glitchy, run it in PyCharm on your computer, right? And that's what would be less glitchy. Great. The other thing that we did in Scratch, which presumably we're going to want to do here too, is we set some variable. Is trash bin to false, or is trash bin to true? Honestly, I don't know if that's going to be necessary or not, but let's just go ahead and add it, and then we'll see later if it's useful. It will be useful, right? So I'm going to say is trash bin. Now this is a variable that I'm setting on the bin itself, so I'm like adding my own variables to it, right? And I'm going to use false for the when it's recycle, and then I'm going to use true for the other one. Now in Scratch, if you look closely, you can see we use 0 for false and 1 for true. That's okay, but actually in Python, it's better to use the word false with a capital F and T with a capital T, true with a capital D. Case matters, right? Case matters in all things programming. So they're different characters, uppercase and lowercase. By the way, other things that you'll notice about Python is they typically don't ever put a space. They put an underscore where a space would be. That is because spaces mean something different to computers. Another thing that we really should do is this variable of setting it true or false. We should set it right at the start as well. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It starts off, for me, mine starts off as recycling. So I'm going to keep this variable is trash bin false up here. Now I told you to do this, so you did it, hopefully. You won't be able to see it happening. And the reason I told you to do it is because the code right here did it. And so that's honestly why I did it. But if you think about why we need it, well, eventually these pieces of trash or these pieces of recycling are going to come down, and we're going to have to know whether we caught it correctly or incorrectly. So somehow we're going to have to know what we are, right? And this variable is how we know. So like this piece of glass, I want to catch this with recycling. And then this is trash, so I catch it there. And so hopefully I've caught all of them correctly so far. And then there's a little trash, and then I'm going to switch to my R, recycling. And so this variable is going to be useful to us in very soon, right? All right, so let's go back and add some more stuff. I need some falling things, right? So I need stuff to fall from the sky. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to start off with a list of falling items. So bear with me, you're learning a lot here. By the way, we could have made just moving something a whole project, right? So we've actually finished a project. And so now we're actually just trying to do like more cool stuff. And so here's what I want to do to start this next thing. I want my falling items to be what's called a list. A list is, instead of just having one thing, you have many things, right? And so inside my list, I'm going to put each of these pieces of trash. So there's a piece of trash, and then I'm going to grab this next one, which is also a piece of trash. And then I'm going to grab the two recycling things as well. So I very carefully left this around just because I had this idea that I could reuse it. If you don't have yours, you got to do some typing, right? So sorry about that. But what this is doing is this is just making these falling items. I can now delete this. Making these falling items in a list. And I'll show you how you can use this to your advantage. If you run it right now, they should show up. So we should have the trash bin down here. And the trash bin is responding to these arrow keys and this R and T. But of course, all my falling items are just huge, right? By the way, one thing I might want to do on these falling items is I might want to set their size to something smaller. My code has them at 80. Maybe I'll go like quite a bit smaller than that. So I'm going to go with 35, which is roughly a third. I guess I should have done 33, so it's roughly a third of their original size. And you can see that maybe that's too small. Maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe a nice 50 would be fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now eventually, so I'm just going to make myself a code. So to do later, we want to generate items during play. So right now we're just testing, right? So we're just getting these 4 items on the screen just to see if we can like make them fall and make them do stuff. Sound good? So eventually we're going to generate them during play. And that is similar to what Scratch had to do. So Scratch, if you look at Scratch, it generated this list over here, right? And it did it through randomly picking whether it was recyclable or trash. And then once you picked one, then you randomly picked which costume, right? And so we're going to do that later. We're going to like kick that can down the road, so to speak. The thing we want to do right now is we want to do this forever change by -2 and then delay a little bit, right? And so that's our goal right now. So we could, if we wanted, add the code into this move bin area, but I think that it's probably easier for your brain if we just make another area called move falling items. So you notice what I did. I grabbed another at repeat forever loop. So just like in Scratch, you can have multiple threads kind of running at a time. And I'm managing all the falling items in this one. And so what I want to do is I want to have each one fall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for, actually we could do this a number of ways. Let's do it this way first. Falling items, bracket 3.y equals, what do we do over there, -2? Try -2. So let's see what happens here. So if I run this one, my falling item number 3 is going to move down. And so you can see it goes, the item right here is at the bottom, so -200, -100, +100, +200. In your head, see if you can guess which one is the third one and which one is going to fall. It probably will not be the tennis ball. It probably will not be the shoes. But the question is it the glass or is it the milk jug that's going to fall when I run this? Let's go ahead and pause the video if you need, think about it, and then you can run it and you can see which it is. And so if I run it, you can see that it's actually number 3 is the glass. That's because computers are zero-based. Lots of information coming at you here. I know that. We're just trying to give you a little follow along to where you can learn a little bit about coding. And that's because the first item is item 0. And so if you wanted them all to move, you would write this. You would say item 0, item 1, item 2. Item 0, item 1, item 2. So if you did this, this would be all of them. So item 0 is the tennis ball, 1 is the shoes, 2 is the jug, or milk, sorry, and then 3 is the glass. So it's kind of neat how it does that. Now, we're programmers, and we never do the same thing like that over and over again if we can do it in a loop. So what we're going to do is instead of just doing it like that, we're going to say this: for falling item in falling items. So this is a loop. Falling item dot y equals falling item dot y minus, I'll speed them up a little bit, I'll go with 3. So sometimes I like to write code and then see if I can kind of guess what it does and then see if it actually works. So falling item in falling items, this is a way to loop through all of them. And for every single one, we're going to change their y to whatever it was before -3. And so this is a much more elegant way of moving them all at the same time. Cool. All right, let's do some more stuff. So I don't really need this code at all anymore. That was just kind of a for example. While I'm closing things up, I guess I could get rid of this. This example here of when clicked, that's a good thing to know about, but we don't really need it for right now. So I think I'm going to clean up the rest of those. Great, so what else should falling items do? Well, falling items, they should get caught by the bin, for example. And so if they are caught by the bin, you've got to get rid of it. And then you've also got to see if it was the correct item to catch, right? So let's go ahead and we'll try to see if we're caught by the bin or not. And so if the following item, what we really want to do is we want to see if it's touching, or like if it's collided with the bin. Let's just see if there's any good functions that are in here. So one way you can explore a library is here's a good one, is touching. That's perfect. One way you can explore a library is through this, what we call the dot trick. And you can try to find what functions it has available and see if any of them are useful to you. So I'm going to say, hey, if we're touching the bin, then I want to do something. And the thing I want to do is I probably want to, like, what did Scratch do? Let's just go see what Scratch did. So if I'm touching the bin, I want to figure out what variable to take up. Yeah, I need to do that, and then delete this clone. So let's see if we can do that. So I think what we want to do is we want to say following item dot remove. Is that right? Yeah, remove. So if the item is touching the bin, remove it. By the way, all these commands, I'm just typing them for you because I know that it's just painful to come look around. But the way you learn something is you just kind of look around and say, hey, is the thing that I want in this library, like, is this something I can do? And this library is kind of made, it's a big file, right? This library is kind of made to be like Scratch, so you can actually just kind of like search for the word like touching. And then there you can see, oh, there's this is touching, and you can pass in another sprite or a point, right? And then they've probably got some examples of it, maybe. Nope, no examples. That's okay. And so that's how you can learn what this library is capable of doing. So let's go ahead and run it again. And what should happen now is when they hit the recycling bin, it will remove it. Now mine actually crashed. I don't want to try to explain this, but it's because. Yeah, not willing to get into why this crashed. I didn't think it was going to crash, but it did. But that's okay. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But we do want to remove it. But that code is currently causing a crash. Let's do this. Let's comment it out until we're ready for it. I tried to do it a little bit out of sequence, and it it didn't work out for me. I think what I need to do. Oh, you know, I bet I can fix it. I think what I need to do is I need to also remove it from the list. That's what I forgot. So I forgot about this, so there's no way that you thought of it. But I need to actually remove it from the list as well. So I want to say from the following items, which is the list of them, notice the plural, remove this particular one. And so that removes this one from the list. And then delete the clone altogether. And what was getting me in trouble whenever I was doing one of those things but not the other is I was removing it from existence, but my list still thought it was there, right? And so it did not exist and my list got mad. All right, cool. So that was actually a good fix to notice that. All right, so some things are happening that are good. My trash is going away when it hits me, which is dandy. But I'm not really changing any variables. I'm not keeping track of things. I'm not generating the trash right. So there's a lot of things to do. If this was a course, I would say, hey, students, what do you want to do next? Because honestly, you could do a lot of things next. But since this is just me talking into a video, I have to pick what to do next. And I think what I want to do is I want to not hard code these trash items. I want to actually start it off with just an empty list. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a copy of this. So Control C. I'm going to paste it right here. And then this way I can comment out one of them. I use the Control / quite a bit. And then modify the other. So there I modified the other. And so for one of them, I commented out just kind of as a reference. And then the other I made empty to start with. And what I really want to do is I want to make something that creates pieces of trash. And so I think what I'll do is I'll grab another one of these functions, and I'm going to call this one create falling objects. You type a lot when you write code, don't you? And one of the goals of creating falling objects is to build up these falling items. And so I think what I want to do is I want to just kind of like put in a couple of quick things. And so I want to randomly pick if it's trash or recycling. This project is so hard. And so what I want to do is I'm trying to create these falling objects. Let's go look at this one to see what it did to create them. So you can see in Scratch what it does is it picked a random number between 1 and 2, and then if it was 1, it created a recyclable. If it was not a 1, it created a trash, and then it waited for 2 seconds. This waiting for 2 seconds. This is where all the async and await stuff came from. I wish I hadn't deleted some of that code, but that's all right. So here's what we need to do. We need to figure out in Python how do we make random numbers, right? Now I'll just tell you, because you could search the internet and find it, there's a module called random. And so just like there's a module called play, which has some helpful functions in it, there's a module in Python called random. And random has all kinds of functions in it. One way to figure out what they are is you can say random dot, and it can do all kinds of stuff for you. One thing it can do is it can make a random integer. This is what Scratch did, so I guess we could do the same thing. So we'll make a random integer. And what you can do is you can make like a 1 or a 2. I think that's what Scratch did. And then if this random integer is equal to 1, then I'll tell you what, we'll just print something for now. Make trash. And then else print make recycling. So if I were to run this right now, it would hopefully print make trash or make recycling, but it would do it very, 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 very fast. And you can see that we need this wait 2 seconds in here, really. I may as well run it just because it's fun to run, but it's going to have so many logs down here, it's not even going to be funny. I'm just going to stop it right away. So you can see that it was making lots and lots of trash and recycling. And you can see that my trick was working. Some of them are trash, some of them are recycling. It was just going kind of fast, right? Now I need to bring back that delay code. Now, one way you could go find it is you could go look at their example. So you can kind of find their example here. And you can see that whenever you want to do a time delay pause, the command looks like this. I'll go ahead and bring this in. So I want to, after I make one, I want to pause. So you say await play.timer, and then the number of seconds is 2.0. You could also just put in 2, but I kind of feel like putting in 2.0. And if I tried to run it now, it would yell at me. We'll just see what the error log is. And it says that you have an await outside of an async function. Blah, blah, blah. Who knows what that even means? It means that your function isn't marked with the word async. Now, not going to go into the details on that. Just time delays are hard to do in code. Isn't that weird that time delays are hard? Blocking time delays are hard to do. And you have to do this async and await to make it be okay, right? That's the easiest way to say it. So now you can see that every 2 seconds it's going to make either trash or recycling, which is kind of cool. This is fun. And then to actually do it, I'm going to make use of helper functions. So the text is all well and good. We could put the code right in here, but just to practice with functions, I'm going to make a helper function. This is going to be really good. Actually, take a pause. I think I'm going to take a pause too. So take a pause, go do something else for a little while, and then come back and we're going to actually implement making trash or making recycling. And we've already got the code to make them fall. That's already done. But instead of just saying make trash or make recycling, let's make it actually do it. And take a short pause, and then we'll come back. We'll do some more. All right, so I took my break, and I'm ready to actually get back to it now. So instead of just printing words, I want to make functions. So let's go ahead and make some more functions. Now let's just kind of pause and look to see what functions look like. Are any of these things functions? No, these are just like things we're doing. We're calling functions. Like here we're calling a function new image. Here we're calling a function new text. Here we're calling a function new image again. This one right here is making a function. Now this is kind of interesting, but to say def is to define a function. And you can see that there's a syntax in Python that goes along with it. This repeat forever, this is part of the play library to call it for you, right? So that it takes care of calling it. What we're going to do now is we're just going to make some functions that we call ourselves. Now where you put the function doesn't really matter. You can put it anywhere in here. I think where I'm going to put it is I'm going to put it right between where I've declared my falling items and then where I've got the create falling objects. I think I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to make two functions. One function is going to be generate trash, kind of a fun name. And for now, he's just going to print gtrash. So this is what a function looks like. So I'm defining this function. So if I ever want to call this function, I'll tell you what I'll go and do now. So instead of saying print make trash here, instead of calling this function, I'm going to call this own function that I made, generate trash. And when you call a function, you put a parenthesis after it. And then I'm going to make another function, generate recycling. And he's going to print grecyc. I'm making them silly short just because I'm going to delete them eventually. And so instead of calling the built-in function that prints make recycling, I'm going to call my function generate recycling. Now if you run it, it's going to actually do a pretty similar thing. It's going to change the message to gtrash and grecycling. But we've done something even more important. Instead of calling the function print, which can do very, very little, we're calling our own function, generate trash or generate recycling. And within that function, we can do all kinds of crazy things. So let's compare to Scratch and see what kind of things we might want to do here. So in Scratch, he creates a clone of recyclables or creates a clone of trash. Let's do trash first. So we're going to start with trash. So in Scratch, this create clone of it picks up inside here when I start as clone. Interesting, in Python, we don't actually make clones per se. We just make more objects. It works a little differently. But his job is to pick a random costume, so another random statement, pick a random position, and then show, and then start following. We're doing this a little differently. The forever stuff is kind of already started. It's down here. That forever part's already kind of done. The only thing we're doing is really these three lines. Like this is our whole goal. Picking which costume, picking where to start, and then showing. And in fact, showing is not necessary because we're not doing clones. So really, we're just trying to do 2 lines of code, right? Somehow it can be hard to just do 2 lines of code. The first line of code is to randomly pick a costume. So let's just go ahead and I'm lazy. We had this statement before, which randomly picked between the numbers 1 and 2. And if it was 1, then I wanted to do a certain thing. And if it was 2, I wanted to do a different certain thing. And what I want to do is I want to set the image file name. So in one case, I want to set the image file name to trash1. And then in the other case, I want to set the image file name to trash2. Now there's many different ways to write this code. I could have appended within the string. There's all kinds of things I could have done. The way I determined whether it was 1 or 2 to get a 50-50, there's nothing sacred about this. So there's literally hundreds of different ways to do it. I was just trying to do one that was easy. And so this is going to pick the image file name. Now this is a technicality, but you probably should have set a default image file name at the top, but that's all right. We'll just give it a go. And then we're going to use that image following name to create an item. Let's call it an item here. And my item is going to be a play.newImage using the image file name. And then we probably should set an X to something. We should probably set. So I'll tell you, I'm just gonna pick a number for right now. I'm gonna set it to, I don't know, 200. Probably should set the Y to something. I'll just go with 200. And the size, I think I've been using the size of 35, and it's been working out okay. So what this is going to do is every time we call generate trash, it's going to make a new item. And it says that the variable was assigned but never used. I suppose we could go ahead and let's try it first, right? So anytime it calls create trash, something should happen. Oh, there's my piece of trash. And the next time it calls it, it will create either the shoes. Oh, there's the tennis ball. Mine worked perfect right off the go. Just what I wanted you to do. So it randomly picked trash, and then mine randomly picked the ball one time and the shoes the other. And so here I can see it picked trash again. It must have done the ball again because nothing showed up. So there's actually 3 objects there. Up there it did trash again. Oh, it did shoes that time. So there's 4 objects there. You can see that it's working. Now it's working, but they're not falling, right? So why are they not falling? So they're getting created, which is cool. They're just not falling yet. Well, they're not falling yet because the only things that fall are in the falling items array. So right now it's an item, it's not yet a falling item. So here's what we have to do. I think I'm going to change this percentage to maybe like 45. They need to be a little bigger. I'm going to say falling items append. If you're familiar with English grammar, append means to add on to. So we're adding on to the list of falling items. We're going to append on item. So coding is a language. The language is, of course, English. And sometimes they try to make the English language and the programming language kind of match. So now, every time I make trash, it's going to start falling. So there you can see that the trash is falling. I think that's kind of cool. I don't know about you, but I think that's kind of neat. Other things that we should probably fix is right now they're all starting at the same spot. So it always knows right where the trash is going to show up. It's also starting like mid-screen. I would rather kind of start it off-screen and kind of like came down. So let's change some stuff. Let's make the Y start a little higher. Maybe we'll start at like, I don't know, 300. That's probably off-screen, or maybe even 350, like clearly above the screen. And then the X, I want to do more stuff with random, right? Man, once you open a can of worms, you can't stop. And so I want to get a random integer, so a random int, somewhere in the range of, by the way, this line's getting kind of long for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of enters in here just so I can kind of like see it better. And so I want to randomly go somewhere from, I don't know, negative 300 up to positive 300. Honestly, I forget how wide the screen is. It might be 400 wide, but that should give me a pretty big range. So whatever it picks trash, it should now, cool, pick some random value that's within the range of the screen. And I really should figure out what the extreme far left and extreme far right is. I suppose that I can just kind of look to see how far some go over. And it'll probably give me a pretty good idea. So it looks like I could probably go more like 400. Maybe 350 will be plenty. Cool. And so I don't need this print statement anymore for print gtrash, so I'm going to delete that. But what I do need to do is I do need to get recycling kind of caught up. Now in coding, if you do the exact same thing twice, you should not copy it twice, but if there's little changes, it's okay to copy it. And so this one's going to have a couple little changes. So here's what I want to do. I actually want to copy this whole generate trash function. I'm going to copy it onto my clipboard, and I'm going to paste it into the generate recycling function. Now I'm going to get rid of the print statement that says print gcycle. And now you can see that I have 2 copies of identical code. So if I were to run it now, it would just make only trash. So maybe it picks recycling, maybe it picks trash. No matter what, the thing coming at me is trash. We of course want to use different file names here. So we don't want to use trash1, trash2. We want to use recycle1, and we want to use recycle2. Oh, and then did this weird thing where I like put on the PNG on there for me again. And so now when we run it, it should randomly pick, there's trash, there's trash, there's a recycling. So the glass is recyclable, at least in most places. Not where I live, but it should be recyclable. And if I wanted to, I could actually catch these things. So I could catch them in the bin. And the moment I catch them, you can see that they disappear, which is kind of cool. Now, right now, I can catch them with trash, the trash as the bin, or the recycle as the bin. It doesn't matter. It just catches everything. You'll also notice that my variables never change at all, which is kind of too bad. So I need to start figuring out how to deal with this, right? I also need to do how to hit the ground. If this was a live class, I'd say, which one do you want to do first? Do you want to do hitting the ground first? Do you want to do catching them first? What do you want to do? There's nobody here to ask, so I'm just going to pick for you. I think what I actually want to do first is I want to do hitting the ground first, which is kind of a weird thing to pick first, but that's what I like to do, so that's what we'll do. So we're going to need a variable. By the way, I don't think I need this anymore. I just wanted to kind of keep that as a reference for a little while. I don't think I need that anymore. And so we want a variable. Now let's observe what we did with this variable. This variable, we put it onto the bin. So we say bin dot is trash bin. That makes it a variable that's on the object, kind of like X is a variable on the object, and there's a lot of different things. The other thing you could do is you could make the variable not part of anything. This works fine in most programming environments, but in Replit Play it does not work as well. And so it's recommended that you always put it onto something. So the bin is going to be the one that has the variable hit ground. And then the bin is going to have the one that has caught correctly. And then the bin is going to be the one that has the caught incorrectly. And so this actually is perfectly consistent with what Python does. You can see that we put these variables in the global namespace in Python, but here we're putting them on the bin. But you can see that we reset all of them to 0 when the game starts up, right? And so we put the trash can on here, the trash bin on here. We go to a certain spot. Who cares what spot he went to? We went to our spot there. And then we put the variables right on him. Now, if you go to variables, you can see that we've got only 4 variables. My variable's not used. So we've actually got all the variables that we're going to need. So let's start figuring out how to change these variables and how to display these variables. Let's worry about changing them first. So first up, let's deal with hitting the ground. So find in your code the function to move falling items. Now, there's a loop here that says for each item in falling items, make it go down, see if it's touching the bin. If it is, get rid of it. I also want another if statement. And what I want to do is I want to say if the falling item, if its y value is less than some limit. I don't really know what the limit should be. I'm just going to have to play with the limit. I think 300 is the very bottom. I think the trash bin is at 200. So maybe that's when I should get rid of them. So if you're less than negative 200, then I want to do the same things that these guys did for now. I want to remove it. Now, I'm going to actually play my game right now because I may have picked the wrong number. But right now, if I don't catch something, it should disappear on me. So it gets to right about there, and you can see that it disappears, saying that it hit the ground. You could change that 200 a little bit if you wanted, because potentially I could like get my trash can over there. But I think that that's okay for me. I think if I was going to be really picky, maybe I'd move everything down some. What the heck? I am really picky. Who am I kidding? I would probably move my trash can down to like 240, and then I would make the cutoff point for this. I might even make it like 290, right? Like 280, 290, to where it's like all the way to the ground. Now the only downside to that is you kind of have to stretch your screen all the time. But you can see that now they don't actually disappear until they're like pretty far down. Cool. That actually looks really good for especially the tennis ball and the shoes. Admittedly, the curtain looked a little bit off, but I think I'm actually pretty happy with it. Now, the chief thing that we're not doing is these numbers never change, right? It's because the variables never change, for one, and then we don't ever write the variable up to here, for two. So we got to do both of those tasks. So we've got to figure out when to change the variables, and then also how to display the variables. Let's do hit the ground first. So if the item got less than negative 280, so whatever you consider the ground, then I'm going to say the bin, what do I call it, hit ground? I forgot what I called it. I think I called it hit ground, is equal to, I got to go look now. Yeah, I called it hit ground. If that happens, then the bin.hitGround is equal to bin.hitGround plus 1. By the way, for people that know it, there's a way to write this line of code just a little shorter. I don't know if I should bother to show this to you or not, but the way you write it shorter is, this is the equals operator, which assigns something. There's another operator, this is a crazy operator, called the plus equals operator. And with the plus equals operator, it assumes that you're changing the variable. So you don't have to say bin.hitGround on both sides. You can actually just say this. So this reads as bin.hitGround, change it and reassign it by adding 1 to it. And so that will actually change the variable. Now what I want to do first is I just want to print it, bin.hitGround, and run it. And so now every time one of them hits the ground, so I'm going to try to make sure not to catch them, which is kind of weird, it's going to print down here in the screen 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's working. So every time it hits the ground, it's working there. But if you look up here, that is never changing. So we got to fix that next, right? So I like to do this. I do these little print statements all the time. As soon as I know they work, I either comment them out or I just delete them. But that was just a little test. Really what I want to do is after the loop. So if you look at this, this code is all inside the loop. But after the loop, what I want to do is I want to change the scoreboard. So I want to say scoreboard words equals something new, right? Now where I put this is important. I put it at the same indentation level as the for loop. That means it's not inside the for loop. Indenting would be inside the for loop. It's actually going to run after it finishes. And what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to say scoreboard.words. So that was the thing that scoreboard has. Like, it doesn't have an X or a Y, but it does have an X and a Y. But it has words, and so you can see that it printed hi there. Now I don't really want to print hi either. What I want to do, I've already typed all this once. I want to print this thing right here. So I'm going to copy this message. And I accept that you're going to have to pause some to do the same thing as me. I want to print this message, but instead of 0, I want to actually put in a number. How do you do that? Well, let's show you a trick. Where it says hit ground equals 0, delete the 0 and instead type bin.hitGround. And this is not going to work, but go ahead and run it. What's it going to print? It's just going to print caught correctly 0, caught incorrectly 0, hit ground equals, literally type the words bin.hitGround. Oh, I didn't even do it right. I needed an underscore in there. The underscore does not fix anything, but it needed an underscore. Now it just says bin.hit underscore ground, which is no better. I want it to actually like put in the number, right? Not the string, the number. There's a trick you can do. This is a fun trick. In front of the string, see how there's a double quote here? See where my cursor's at? Type the letter F. This makes it a formatted string. With formatted strings, you can put things in curly braces. So I'm going to take the words hit ground here and put them in curly braces. It's a very long line of code, so I'm going to kind of move over a little bit here. And now what does this do? This does a formatted string, and since it's in curly braces, when it hits the ground, it's going to actually change it. So now it's going to say 1, 2. Oh, I cut that one. Then this one hits, it'll say 3, 4. Cool. 5. That one's going to be a catch. And then here comes number 6. You get the idea, right? Now I don't want to do that with just one. I want to do it with all of them. So I want to do a curly braces thing there and a curly braces thing here. And this time I want to set bin.caught correctly. If my IDE was better, it would actually autocomplete this. Nope, I don't think it's gonna. I can just type it again, caught correctly. And then this one I want to print out bin.caught incorrectly. Now for some people it bothers them. This line of code is like huge, humongous. If that bothers you, I can show you how to fix it. If it doesn't bother you, don't worry about it, right? Because whenever I scooch it over, it just kind of rolls, which is fine. And so it's running just fine. Now these two are 0 because we're not changing them yet, right? But we're doing pretty good. But if it bothers you that it's a long line, I don't recommend you fix it. But one thing you can do is you can actually break up the line. So this is the trick that you can use to break up the line. If you put in a close of that double quote, a plus symbol, and an open of that double quote. Oops, I need the F back again here. That's one way you can kind of like break up this long line if it bothers you. Personally, it doesn't bother me, and I don't care about it. But if it bothers you, you can break it up like that. And then once you've broken it up like that, then you can break up the line. I'm trying to remember how to do this. I think you have to put a backslash on there. I think that is the right syntax. And then that's how you can break up long lines into multiple lines. Personally, I don't think that adds anything, but some people are like, it's super annoying that the line is long, because that's one way that you could break it up legally. Not a fan, so I'm putting mine back. Almost back. Control Z myself all the way there. There you go. One nice monster line of simplicity. Great. Let's see if we can change these two other situations. Now here we got a problem, right? If I'm touching the bin, which one do I increment? So in one case, I want to increment caught incorrectly. I wish it would autocomplete. So I want to do like a plus equals 1 to him. And then in the other case, I want to do caught correctly. So how do I know which one I want to do, right? It's kind of complex, to be perfectly honest. And it's kind of complex because we've got to know what the trash is, or sorry, what the bin is set to. And we've also got to know whether it was trash or recycling. So we've got to know both pieces to kind of figure this out, which is kind of tricky, right? So let's go ahead and start off by saying if the bin is trash, what do I call this one? Is what do I call it? Is trash bin. Is trash bin. So if it's trash bin is equal to if the item, falling item, is trash, then it's correct. Likewise, if it's both false, that will actually be okay. But if it's a trash bin and this item is trash, then it's going to be correct. But if it's not that case, then it's going to be caught incorrect. So I'm going to type an else here, and I'm going to indent this one 2 spaces. So here's my plan. This will not work yet. If you try to run it right now, it's going to crash and burn. So if the bin is trash and the following item is trash, then it's correct. Else, it's incorrect. And you can see how these are indented too and all that stuff, right? The part of this that doesn't work yet is we never set this one. We set is trash. Remember, we kind of did that earlier. I said, just trust me, it'll be good. Well, what we've got to do is we've got to set on the item if it's trash or not. So it's actually pretty easy. So we've got 2 functions up here. One is for generating trash, the other is for generating recycling. On the trash one, we want to say item, which is his name in this area. Item is trash, true. So he is trash, right? I'm going to copy this line because I'm a very lazy individual. And I'm going to come down to the recycling, and I'm going to say is trash false. So this keeps track of, for this item, which is not yet a falling item, but it soon will be. For this item, is it trash? Yep. Is it trash? Nope. And so then I can use that information later. Let's see, some goodness could potentially happen here if this all works. So that's recycling, and I'm recycling. And so if I catch this one, I'm expecting caught correctly to go up. Awesome. That one, I'm just going to let it hit the ground. I'm going to catch this tennis ball incorrectly. So tennis ball's coming in, 0, boom, it went to 1. I'm going to let these others hit the ground. So you can test it to your heart's content, but hopefully it's going. If I switch over to trash, this is a piece of trash, so this should be a correctly caught. Awesome. These guys are all trash. So my 2 is going to go to 3, and then my 3 is going to go to 4. My 4 is going to go to 5, and then this is going to be incorrect. That's going to take up that one. And so you can see how the game works. We've got a pretty good game. And so we're actually able to catch things, which is neat. It's able to categorize what type of catch we did, which is fun. The only thing that we're missing is we're missing game appeal, right? Like there's no way to win or lose or anything like that. So in some sense, I consider the game done because honestly, my goal was to learn about coding. My goal was to learn about variables, and the game is done. But if you have somebody play your game, they're immediately going to say, "What's the point?" Right? Like, did I win? Did I lose? People need to be able to win and lose. It's just kind of part of the human condition, right? And so before we wrap it up today, let's go ahead and make a way to win and lose, or at least win, or sorry, I was going to say at least lose, just to give us some level of completion. And so you can stop here if you want to call the game done. I don't mind that at all. But I'm going to see if I can figure out how to stop the game if I mess up 10 times. So let's see if we can figure this out. So after the falling is done, we go to the scoreboard. And then after the scoreboard, I'm going to make sure to indent correctly. I should be in 2 spaces. After the scoreboard, I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to say, hey, the bin, if you're caught correctly, PyCharm would have totally auto-completed that for me, but it looks like in Replit it's not. Plus you're caught incorrectly are greater than or equal to 10, then we're going to say that the game is over. And say is game over. Is game over? True. So, what did I do here? I set a threshold of 10. And I'm going to run it just to make sure I typed everything right. And so whenever it gets to 10, which I'm not going to wait for, I just want to see if it crashed. If it crashed, I know I just had a typo, but no typos. When it gets greater than 10, I'm going to set game over to true. Now variables, let's talk about variables. This variable I am setting down here, so I should probably like set it to an initial value, like somewhere up here. Maybe I'll do it first. Is game over, I'm going to set it to false. So I'm going to set it initially to false, it's not over. But then when we get down here, I'm going to set it to true. And now what I want to happen is if the bin is true, I want to like shortcut all these things. So what I'm going to do is very simple. At the top of falling, I'm going to say if bin dot is game over, I'm going to return. Return means don't run any more code. So if I do this, nobody's going to fall, which is actually pretty good. I can do this in the others as well. So if I'm creating falling objects, if the game is over, I just return. Generating recycling I don't actually need because that's a function that's called from here. But moving bin, I suppose I can put it here. And so I did this kind of fast, I admit. But what's going on here is if I'm moving the bin, it's actually going to check to make sure the game's not over. If the game is over, it's just going to return and not run any of this other code. Same with creating falling objects. Same with moving falling objects. So I better see how many points I can get here before I die. So right now I have caught a couple things incorrectly. I've caught a couple things correctly. I'm just kind of doing some things. And as soon as I get to 10, it's supposed to all shut down. Looks like it did not work. And so why didn't it work? I don't honestly know why it worked. I must have done something wrong. So if the bin caught correctly plus the bin, caught correctly. I put the same variable in there twice, didn't I? That's funny. So if caught correctly plus caught, no, it's two different variables. Incorrectly is greater than 10. Then do game is over. I know what I did. Caught correctly, which is 2, doesn't really matter, right? So right now you can see it stopped at 8 plus 2. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do hit ground plus incorrect. So I wanted hit ground. I sometimes make mistakes like that to see if you catch me. I'm just teasing. That was a totally goof. All right, so now, if I catch a couple incorrectly, so that was an incorrect, these two are corrects, I'm going to let those two just kind of hit the ground. I think I'll catch these shoes incorrectly, so that one should go up. And whenever the total gets above 10 of these two, so there's 5 and 3, 5 and 4, as soon as that one hits 5 and 5, the game stops. I consider that good enough. If you would like, you can add more features. So for example, in the solution, if you want to go look at it, it also has a little bit of code to where if you catch 100 items correctly, I think it's got this one in here, you win. Actually I took that out. I did that with my son. So he really wanted to win at some point, and so I made a way to win. Never mind, it looks like this version doesn't have it. But you can choose to add to your games whatever you would like. This was a big game. Do you see what line number I'm on here? 100. So most people in this class have never written any Python. And this is not a one-day program. This is a multi-day program. Because we've written 100 lines of code. It's like your teacher said, write a paper with absolutely no errors in it that's 100 lines long. Look at all this. This is awesome. But it's something that if we're working together, we can do. Now, if you're working on your own, you can do things, but I wouldn't start this big. We're just showing you like small skills that you can use to kind of leverage to build up doing in Python some things that you did in Scratch. So we'll just kind of say a couple things, and then we'll cut off this thing.
Recycling is important, so that's definitely one thing we like to say in these. Breaking a big problem into smaller pieces is important, and there's just so many things that you can do with code. It's really just tremendous. All right, so that is it for this time. Recycling is done is actually the biggest project of the 4 of these. Next time we'll come back and we'll learn about Save the Fish, and we'll kind of do the same thing where we take a scratch project and we see what would this look like in Python to try to get you leveling up in your coding abilities. See you then. Bye.